Hello, and I just have a quick one today. This has to do with a particular tell for INFJs. Now, I don't have any idea if it universalizes to all INFJs, but I see a common thread across a lot of them on this particular tell. And that has to do with the way that INFJs communicate. I describe it as having a signal to noise ratio. And if that sounds intriguing, listen on. The way I came about this is that recently I was interacting with an INFJ and trying to describe what makes INFJs a little bit odd. And in trying to pin it down, I just happened to come across this idea that it's not the presence of something, it's the absence of something that makes it clear to me that they're an INFJ. And when I started digging down into that further, what it comes down to is that, let's take a step back, because there's such a thing as a communication stack. And this isn't the technology version of it, but it's the way that we communicate. Communicating with each other is kind of a small miracle. It's some really complicated stuff when you stop to think about it, because we each come to the table with our own inner states, our own ideas of what words mean, our own definitions, our own kind of context of experience, and that includes cultural ideas and ideals. And so we have this self-contained start, and then we engage in a discussion session with someone. So in that session, we exchange back and forth different ideas, for instance. And those ideas are through both verbal and nonverbal communication. So we're using words to mean things, and oftentimes they mean concrete things, but then they also are used for abstract ideas. And then there's like a meta level of maybe intended meaning that's beyond those, what the actual words themselves are saying. But a large extent of this is all nonverbal communication. You're not just hearing the things that I say, but you're observing how I'm saying them. You're listening to the cadence and the tone of my words, and looking at my expressions to sort of read what is the intent of this person. Are they upset? Do they seem credible? And so an entire communication kind of session, the wrapper of it, is really quite complex. And if you think about the way that you interact with people in regular life, you just regular good old conversations, you can get really informal with things. You just kind of throw stuff around, and it's all sort of easy, I'd say, in a way. And even with looking at this, what I'm doing here, I'm throwing a lot of kind of noise into the signal, as in you're observing me and you can say, this guy is thinking about stuff before he's saying it, and the way that his eye movements and hand movements and expression versus the words, that doesn't really line up, but there's just there's a fire hose of information that is getting sent your way about what this whole thing looks like, and you can interpret all of that beyond the words to kind of the communication session and the intended meaning and the nature of the presenter and all that good stuff. So when you get to INFJs, they have a very clean and clear signal, I'd say. So where I throw in a lot of interference, where it's almost like, let's say, like listening to an LP, there's a lot of cracks and pops and hiss and all this background stuff that's happening that's not part of the music, but it sort of lends a certain warmth to the communication. An INFJ is more almost like a CD, that you're observing them and they're doing specific things. They say particular things in specific ways, and the meaning is the intended meaning. And then when they're listening, they're also listening with intent and providing feedback, verbal or nonverbal feedback, that's also specific to what's required for the interaction. In a way, they're very good at this communication ability. And the trade-off, though, of being very good in that way, like I said, comparing a CD to, say, a record album, is that you don't get that kind of similar warmth of all sorts of thrown out there signals of additional stuff that just happens to be there. What you're getting is sort of a crisp and clean communication, wrapper. So if you want to observe this in action, you can go over and look at, say, Joyce Meng, or Amy Lynn, or Clay Arnall, or Renaud Contini. Because it is such a clear signal, it doesn't really translate well into a real informal way of talking to people. There's always sort of a certain layer of formality with this. And so if you look at videos from these folks, you'll kind of see the common thread between them, that there is that intent of communication, saying very specific things in particular ways, and not having a lot of additional verbal and nonverbal communication around that core of the transmitted intent. So that's where you can tell I am certainly not an INFJ, because I can't do that. Anyway, I hope that's interesting to you, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. Again, I'm not claiming this universalizes, but I see it as enough of a common thread, and I also see it with my boss, who's an INFJ, that I think there's something to it, and something to a particular method of approaching communication that is different for INFJs or NFJs than they are for other personality types. So there you have it, and I hope you find that interesting, and thanks for listening. Bye for now.